sky. We are here lost in the night, like a child who's been kissed by the dark. It hurts like a hole in a heart. There is something you should know. I die before I let you go. I work my fingers to the bone to follow the line of this. All the things that we've been told, we will never let them go. All the dreams from us to go, we will never let them beat us. All the things that we've been told, we will never let them go. All the dreams from us to go, we will never let them beat us. We will never let them beat us. We will never let them beat us. Burning our eyes in the sun. Our demons have nowhere to run. Like sirens that cut through the lights. Oh, we'll never stop chasing this life. There is something you should know. I die before I let you go. I work my fingers to the bone to follow the light of day. All the things that we've been told, we will never let them go. All the dreams from us to go, we will never let them beat us. All the things that we've been told, we will never let them go. All the dreams from us to go, we will never let them beat us. We will never let them beat us. We will never let them beat us. All the things that we've been told, we will never let them go. All the dreams from us to go. All the things that we've been told, we will never let them go. All the dreams from us to go, we will never let them beat us. All the things that we've been told, we will never let them go. All the dreams from us to go, we will never let them beat us. All the things that we've been told, we will never let them go. All the dreams from us to go, we will never let them beat us. All the things that we've been told, we will never let them go. All the dreams from us to go, we will never let them beat us. All the things that we've been told, we will never let them go. All the dreams from us to go, we will never let them beat us.
You're listening to the RM Podcast, the official podcast of Red Moon Productions. Here are your hosts, Brandon Davidson, Keith Cheatham, and Sean Sebastian. Enjoy.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Red Moon Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Brandon Davidson, alongside our normal new host, Sean Sebastian, and
Keith Cheatham.
we're starting things off, so right this October.
Oh, so right.
That's right, we're finally in the month of Halloween. Ooh.
I had to think for a second because
What?
I mean, we're 6 days in, but this is the first podcast.
Yeah, this is our
of the
first
show.
episode
Yeah.
in the new month.
And we do have, as always, our
Our
Halloween
double
reviews.
reviews.
So we
That's
have
right.
And this year's a little special. Last year we did the Universal monster movies, and which was, it's kind of nice because we started almost. I mean, there had been horror movies before then, but the Universal monster films really kind of changed the way horror cinema was, and now we're kind of jumping ahead a few like about a decade or so to another kind of revolutionary time period for horror
Yep.
with a revolutionary filmmaker who not just
Master of suspense.
I don't want to repeat some of the stuff I said in my review. You'll hear it. But
Yeah,
I mean,
but
definitely,
we teased it last week,
Yeah.
and we're getting all of our viewers and listeners ready, of course, because finally this is Halloween month, so we're doing a bunch of these, obviously 4 reviews.
this
since
year's
there's
gonna
4 weeks
be
leading up to Halloween.
themed around Alfred Hitchcock.
Yes.
Excellent filmmaker. I
Should
think
we
can all
should
agree.
we actually go ahead and I guess give a heads up for each of the films that we're reviewing? We
Yeah.
obviously have the one for tonight, but we can probably
Oh yeah, we already
let
know
our
all of
listeners
them,
know
so-
the other 3 that we're going to do after this one, because there's obviously a plethora of Hitchcock films we
and they're
could
all
cover.
very significant in their own way from Hitchcock. Definitely 3 of them are some of his most known and biggest, and then the other one is still highly acclaimed, if not as well known by mass audiences. But this week we have Rear Window,
Yes.
followed next week by Dial M for Murder,
Dun, dun, dun.
then The Birds, all leading up to Halloween. And to that show, we will be doing Psycho, one of the most
Yes.
acclaimed and well-known Hitchcock
Which is
films,
kind of
especially in the
crazy that
genre
we've
of
been
horror.
doing this show
And
for
not-
5 years
yeah.
and not done Psycho.
Yeah.
Like we haven't reviewed it, which is crazy because I figured that would have
Well,
at least been like a guest review. Or
I
something.
save like very significant ones for every Halloween, like because I've done Halloween, The Exorcist.
Yeah, we've done. Yeah,
and I always choose like the actual Halloween podcast. I make sure is a very like prominent
iconic
film.
one. Yeah.
So that's why, because that one's definitely one I would do on Halloween, and
Mm-hmm.
I just hadn't, we've been doing this 5 years, so that's only 5 very iconic films.
Yeah.
So this year we finally get to do Psycho.
But also, I've got to thank Sean for a little special treat that you brought us this
He
week
did.
to get us in the mood. We cracked open.
Oh yeah,
just
pretty
before
good.
the show. Let's hold them up.
It's not bad.
Yeah, we could
There they
show-
are.
Show the
Little
camera.
Sammy Adams. Jack.
Sam.
What is it? What was it?
Jacko
Pumpkin.
Pumpkin.
Ale.
Jack O Pumpkin Ale right there.
It is very.
It tastes like a
pretty
pumpkin.
good.
It tastes
It's sweet.
It's not bad.
It's got. I definitely taste the cinnamon and nutmeg that it talks about.
Well, yeah, I taste the
You
pumpkin.
can definitely
yeah.
taste
The cinnamon's
that. It's
actually-
like drinking pumpkin pie.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and it's just a hint. It's not too strong, not overbearing. I like their Oktoberfest, which
Yeah.
is out now as well.
That's a good one.
That one I had at my brother's this past weekend.
Yeah.
Very good.
I was gonna grab that, and then I saw this sitting next to it, and I was like, that's different. Like
Yeah.
I thought Oktoberfest was their kind of pumpkin
they're,
ale,
they're,
but
this whole season, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
And I think it
because
typically is.
it is. The Oktoberfest beers aren't necessarily like pumpkin flavored like this is.
Yeah.
I mean, they do have like pumpkin, but they're a little bit different. And I do love this time of year for that reason, because of beer. Like everybody gets excited over pumpkin spice and their coffee and this
Yeah,
and that.
it's too
And-
much for
and
me, man.
I don't care so much about that, but the October beers, when you have seasonal like the
Yes.
Oktoberfest beers and the pumpkin beers,
well, even
and-
the winter
and-
ales
and
coming
even
up.
the winter
are
ales
really
are
good.
good. Yeah.
And I mean, and I just bought Zombie Dust, which is seasonal, and that's
It's
so
crazy
good,
to me
but-
because I honestly get tired. I think I say this every October that I get tired of all the pumpkin spice stuff.
Yeah.
Because it's just, to me, it's overbearing.
Yes.
And I literally only typically like just pumpkin pie.
Yeah.
With like it's warm.
Now, I like
whipped
pumpkin.
cream.
Yeah, I
So
like
good.
pumpkin flavored things. I've eaten different, but I mean, I don't overdo it. Like I do, people get like 24/7.
Yes, see, I
don't-
can't do that. Well, and,
Yeah.
and thankfully that's why I like this beer, because it's like
good.
it's not overbearing with the
No.
pumpkin spice. So it's actually
It's just got that aftertaste.
yeah,
Yeah.
just
like
a little
you
bit
just
of
took
the.
a bite
It's
of
very
pie or
sweet,
something.
yeah.
it
Yeah.
is very sweet
aftertaste,
though.
but
But we
Yeah.
also have a regular review this week.
We
too.
do.
So we've got our Rear Window review.
I wasn't
which
as
is our
excited
Halloween.
about it.
We're-
That's why I
and
didn't-
I'm gonna
Actually,
toss
I was
this to
excited
you all.
about it, but then
No,
after
no.
I saw it, I'm not.
That's what I'm saying. I was excited to watch it.
Yes, yes.
I was
Same
just
here.
saying the reason I touted Hitchcock right off the bat was because after having seen it, I'm not as excited to talk about it.
I did watch actually the regular movie review first.
Yeah.
I watched it, and then I immediately followed it with Rear Window,
You
which
had to-
just
yeah.
it really actually was a good starting like kickoff to our Halloween.
So which
reviews.
review do you want to knock out first then?
I'm gonna say let's start with the bad
Okay.
and end with the good.
I'm okay with that.
And that is, we teased it last week anyway, so it's no secret. Enola Holmes is the movie that we chose.
It's gotten
But you
a
go ahead
lot
and
of-
set it up,
I'm just
Keith.
saying it's gotten a lot of rave reviews. It has like a 90-something on Rotten Tomato. Fans like it. And I just want to say that I feel like they're all wrong.
Yeah.
So here is our review of Enola Holmes.
First published in 1887, A Study in Scarlet, written by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, introduced the world to Sherlock Holmes, the single most recognized literary detective to enter pop culture. Since his introduction, there have been numerous stories written by Doyle about the character, and having entered public domain, numerous other authors have written their own stories about the character. We've seen television and film adaptations made of the character, and one would be hard-pressed to find someone who didn't know the name. However, the same cannot be said about the name Enola Holmes, a character created in 2006 by author Nancy Springer. Enola Holmes is the titular character of her own series of books written by Springer, and also the younger sister of Sherlock Holmes. The young adult series found its own success, enough that Netflix has adapted the first novel into an original movie, with the promise of sequels on the way. Starring Millie Bobby Brown as Enola and directed by Harry Bradbeer, Enola Holmes tells the story of Sherlock Holmes' younger sister having been raised alone by their mother, their father having died while Enola was young, and Sherlock and Mycroft, played by Henry Cavill and Sam Claflin, respectively, being significantly older than Enola so as to not have been around during her childhood. Enola is exceptionally smart, intuitive, and headstrong, defying the expected social norms of Victorian-era women. When Eudora Holmes, Enola's mother, played by Helena Bonham Carter, goes missing, Enola is placed into the care of her older brother Mycroft, who plans to send her off to a finishing school. When Sherlock seems reluctant to take her under his own custody, at Enola's request, Enola instead sneaks away, setting out to solve the mystery of their missing mother herself. Enola Holmes is a solid family film that kids will enjoy, but I cannot say much for it past that. Millie Bobby Brown gives a solid performance, and Cavill as Sherlock proves surprisingly effective. The film likewise is well made, and all in all will please those looking to have a fun distraction for the whole family. What the film lacks, though, is any true substance. As mystery films go, it's alright, though it tends to showcase Enola's adventures and exploits more so than how she arrives at any given conclusion. Part of the fun of any mystery film, especially a Holmes story, is watching how whoever is solving the case puts together the pieces of the puzzle, offering clues to the viewer to give them a chance at solving the mystery themselves. The Sherlock adaptation starring Robert Downey Jr. as Holmes does this well. Enola, however, always seems to know the answer, and the fun of solving the mystery is absent. In fact, Enola doesn't just always know the answer, everything she does comes easily, without struggle or challenge. Enola is a flawless character, and without character flaws to overcome herself, she spends the film helping everyone else overcome theirs. This lack of development in its main character makes the film one that, while not necessarily bad, isn't much fun to watch. With Mycroft and Sherlock exhibiting the flaws ingrained into their characters from Arthur Conan Doyle himself, the contrast between them and Enola is grating. The film focuses a lot on making sure Enola is empowered and capable, defying what women of the time were allowed to do. And this in and of itself isn't bad. But when there's no growth to prove Enola can overcome these expectations, there's no tension left in the film. One assumes Enola will solve the case because outside of a physical conflict and near-death escape, neither of which challenge Enola's beliefs or cognitive abilities, there's no reason to believe she may fail. Ultimately, I was left wondering why this story is one that needed to be told. I am not opposed to Enola being Sherlock's sister, or even being just as, if not more, capable than him. In fact, the premise alone is intriguing. But when she outsmarts and overcomes her more famous brothers, without any struggle for the exclusive reason being that she's a girl, I can't help but feel like the story wastes a lot of opportunity. I give Enola Holmes 2.5 out of 4 stars.
2.5 out of 4 stars for Enola Holmes.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I gave it 2.5 because I thought as a family film, I thought kids would still enjoy it, and it was
It's clean.
yeah, it's clean.
Yeah.
It was a fine family film that I thought. So I was like, I'll
Agreed.
give it. Yeah, I was like, I can give it 2.5 because you could sit down with your kids and your family and watch it, and you'd be fine, and you'd be entertained for a little bit. But there's just so much about it that just kind of lost me, and
Yep.
that I didn't care for.
I was gonna say I think I'm maybe on the higher end, but we'll go around. So Sean, what did you?
I gave it 2.5
2.5 as
also.
well.
Yep.
I'm settling actually on, and it's a very weak 3 stars.
Oh wow.
But the reason behind that is I thought it did have enough to entertain for the audience that it was going for. And I thought it was overall a very well-rounded story. But it's funny because as I continue to talk about it, the rest of it's probably going to be, knocks against
My
it,
biggest
so.
problem, and I think why I couldn't go higher than 2.5, and that's how I finished my review, was I didn't get, for me, when I watch something, like obviously you could say this about any story, like why does it exist? Why does this story need to be told? And you could say that about anything, but that's up to the movie and the story to prove like why it's an important enough story to be out there.
Right.
And when I watched it, I was just like, there's nothing about this that I felt like needed to have. Like, I loved the idea. It's like, okay, Sherlock has a sister, no one knows her out,
Right.
that can compete with him, that is almost smarter than him, and it's like that's an interesting dynamic. But they don't put it to any effect.
I even love like how they open it up when she meets him, and and they have no idea who she is.
Right. Yeah.
And they set
Walks
it
right
up.
past her.
Yeah, it's perfect.
and it was really good. And I was like, okay, this could be a really good dynamic. But then they never did anything with it. She just automatically could achieve anything she wanted.
Yes.
And be even smarter than Sherlock without trying. And I'm like, okay, so there's no struggle. There's no character growth. There's nothing going on here.
I mean, to be honest, she learns all of that from her mother, so that even would say that the mother is smarter than all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I didn't understand.
Which kind of
And
takes away the
that's-
significance of Sherlock
yeah,
Holmes.
Right.
And it's like, and again, it's like I don't have a problem with this other than it's like the only reason it felt like it was the case was just because they wanted, because she was a girl, to have this empowering message, which again, I'm not against.
Right.
But without any personal growth or conflict, it's like, okay, well, she can do anything.
Yeah.
And better than Sherlock because he has like flaws that he has to overcome.
Right.
And it just really irked me.
That was my main. There were two primary issues I had with it. That being the biggest one, which was I actually was kind of excited once she breaks free from the mansion that she grows up in with her mother, where she's raised only by her mother. And I thought, oh, okay, well now we're finally going to get to see her explore the world. And even the maid that is in their home kind of makes light of this, or doesn't make light of the situation. That she kind of goes to Sherlock when they come back home, and she's like, you have to go after her. She's not ready for the real world. And I took that as, okay, she's going to have some struggles. She does, but really the only struggles that she ends up having happen to be with one of the antagonists that are already in the film chasing after somebody she just happens to run into.
Yeah.
And other than as far as like her getting to London and struggling with the way they do things there, no, it's like she
falls right into it.
Yeah, she jumps right in and acts like, I mean, there's little things here and there, but nothing that to me showcases growth.
Right.
And her becoming an adult, because that's kind of what the story is about. And of course, the whole premise being that her mother leaves, her and abandons her is what she thinks, and so she's trying to seek out why. And of course, she thinks it's she's just leaving me a breadcrumb trail to make it on my own. And I thought that was an okay dynamic. I thought, obviously, I didn't mind the feminist angle they went with the film. I thought the whole idea of it being women's suffrage in that time period in London or in the UK was kind of a good backdrop.
Right, it fits.
It fit. I didn't think there was anything wrong with that. There was a little bit of man-hating that went on in terms of like, it's like, oh yeah, her two brothers come back home. One of them's a complete, just asshole. And the other one, it's like he's kind of aloof, or he just doesn't pay any mind to her. Or it's like, oh, she's not my responsibility, which happens to be Sherlock's, personality. And then it's like they talk about her dad killing over, but yet there's one simple memory that Sherlock brings up of her and her dad, and her carrying around this little acorn that she called Dash, and it's supposed to be this like very loving memory. And I thought it was not only funny, but I thought this was going to be a bridge back to maybe like some kind of memory and soft memory she has of her father. It's like, no, he's never really brought up.
They never go
He
anywhere
obviously,
with that.
I know the biggest influence in her life was her mom. There's nothing wrong with that. But then for her to not have any kind of tie back to her dad, I'm just like, oh, okay, so yeah, it's like we don't need dads.
That was kind of what...
And that kind of irked me a little bit.
But yeah, that was kind of what the movie was made up was it was made up of a lot of these threads that never really tied into anything else. It was like these different story threads went somewhere, and you think you know where they're going, and you're pleased by that, and then they don't end up delivering anything. And I felt like that was my biggest issue with the movie was I didn't really feel like there was an urgency to find her mother. I didn't really feel like what her mother was, I don't want to give it away, but like what her mother was into was that drastic or even that like serious. I didn't feel like Sherlock really gave a crap about her, which kind of fits his personality outside of this film, like the Sherlock Holmes that we know from the stories and the other movies. Even the Robert Downey Jr. films are amazing. And it's like his character alone was completely different in this, which I know was something a lot of people praised, was how his personality was so different in this story than it is in all the others. But to me, it just didn't add to the story. It detracted me from the story because I wanted Sherlock to be Sherlock. And
Yes.
I'm not saying that Henry Cavill did a bad job with what he was given or the character that he was given. He played that character well, but outside of this, he wasn't the Sherlock Holmes that we know.
And I think that goes back to kind of the all so many threads throughout, because it's like they could have again went with a story of like, oh yeah, Sherlock we're going to use his genius and the fact that everybody knows him and the fact that he is this great mystery solver as a backdrop to show you just how great her wits are.
yeah.
And they could have used that as a story tie-in and made that kind of like them competing with each other. But you really only see Sherlock in moments where it's like he kind of pops up.
Comes and goes.
He comes and goes. And even in the moments he offers a little bit of a hint at like, oh, okay, yeah, you're on the right trail, Enola. But, and there, you sense a little bit of like brotherly, sisterly love because he's like, wanted to take her under, his wing. And then I also loved, there was the little, kind of chuckle at the end when he comes in to solve the crime and Enola beat him to it based on, the journey you saw her take. And I didn't mind that. I was like, it was kind of like a handing of the torch in his way of being like, okay, good. She's got the gene too.
Yeah.
Like that, there were so many levels in which it
wouldn't have
worked.
minded that if she had fought for it, but it's like everything
I
just
felt
seems
like, yeah,
so-
it just
Everything
fell
came
into
to her.
place.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
And she, again, going back to that whole problem of, I felt like there were just no flaws within her that she had to overcome, that every single thing she did right. And I thought that was a little too, that just isn't realistic, and there's no character. It's kind of like what people have complained about with Rey and Star Wars.
Yeah, that she's a Mary Sue. And even that, I felt like Rey had a harder time doing things than Enola Holmes did.
Yeah.
And one thing I love about Sherlock Holmes stories, and the Robert Downey Jr. movies did this well, is that you get all the pieces and all the clues,
Yes.
and you get to see Sherlock putting them together and figuring it out. And if you're smart enough, you can put them together and figure it out before him or along with
that's
him.
non-existent.
And that's non-existent in
Well,
this
it
movie.
even goes into the fact that it shows him calculating
Yeah.
in the movies. Like if you notice from those films, even just a fight scene, they do that slow motion thing where he
Yes.
says
Yep.
right jab to the rib bone, loosening the kidney and all that.
And it gets to
like
showcase,
I love
how
that.
smart he
yeah,
is.
because you're seeing him work all this out in his mind before he even speaks or
But
moves.
it's like a fraction of a
yeah,
second.
yeah, and I really wish, and I know they don't want to copy off another thing that someone else has already done, but you don't really ever see her calculating or coming.
Yeah, the most
or
you
finding
get are
the
like
pieces
the
to
Scrabble
yeah,
pieces.
the word
She
jumble.
just happens to like figure everything out, and it's like you're not really giving anything to work with. And I'm like, well, this is just kind of. It's like I guess I'm supposed to just believe that she knows exactly what's going on.
And then you were talking earlier, Brandon. We were talking about it earlier about the instance with the bombs and all that kind of. Go into that real
so
quick.
that was my other huge problem with the film was that there was a brief moment of I thought, okay, well maybe Enola is on the same page as Sherlock, and they're thinking behind, like even when Enola stumbles upon what her mother's grand scheme is as she's trying to track her down, and it happens to be almost like a terroristic act because of the women's suffrage movement. And it's almost like, well, if it goes south and this doesn't pass Parliament, well, then they have some ulterior motives. And so my thought was, okay, yeah, that's a little drastic. And Enola even is like, why would Mom do that? And she even meets up with Sherlock and questions him, and Sherlock's already discovered this as well. And at first I'm like, okay, they're both questioning like, wow, that's too far. Hopefully
Resorting to
Mom's
violence,
Mom's not going to jump towards that. But then the way Sherlock puts it, he's like, well, maybe, it's just she thinks that she's going to change the world. And then Enola Holmes, I think, kind of quips back with this subtle line of, well, maybe it's the world that needs changing, as if she's going to be in agreement that it needs to be taken that far.
By force.
And I just thought, at that point, I was like, okay, I don't necessarily agree with them agreeing that this was the right action of taking. I thought them questioning their mother's motives was actually good, and them trying to call her out on like, hey, you and your little secretive group are going too far. And the fact that Enola was kind of backing down on that, even though it's ironic because the way in which she solves the actual crime and the issue at hand is by just following the breadcrumb trail and piecing everything together, such that in the end, the very resolution that they want to reach is reached without having to resort to that.
Right.
So then magically after that, then the mom shows back up because obviously she doesn't have to go along with her master plan. And I'm just like, okay, well then that just proves to you that the resolution could have been brought peacefully,
Right.
without having to be
It's
resorted
almost
to the violence.
It's almost condoning the violence. It's like if you don't get what you want,
then
through,
this
you know,
may be the
don't use
necessary
your voice,
way.
Don't use
Yeah.
legislation. You need to use violence. And I didn't appreciate it just right now because
Especially,
of what's going on in
what's
our
going
country.
on right now.
Yeah, and I know that we talked about it. So this movie was filmed
Well, before all this.
year started,
Yeah.
and before a lot of the stuff that we're dealing with in our cities and stuff has started. But it's kind of but you made a good point. You said I can't believe they didn't go back and like maybe re-edit some of the words and
Rechange.
or
I
change
just
some
thought
of the
that was a little bit.
dialogue.
And
just
again,
a little
it
bit.
depends on your viewpoint because there's some people that argue what's going on right now is
Is
needed.
is
Yes.
needed
So-
for
And
change.
that was my only drawback on the film too, is I thought that was a little bit pointed where to me it's like they set the mother up obviously as this very, obviously independent woman who raises her daughter and
Apparently
raises
she's
her
the
right.
greatest Holmes because
Yes,
I mean,
yeah.
she raises this,
Yeah.
Enola, and it's like the way in which she raises her is to be the best there is, and it's like, but I thought it was funny because I thought that would have been a good moment in the end of them coming back together and her confronting her mom and saying, but don't you realize like the person
What
you
you were-
raised
yeah.
is actually better than what you were trying to be. And I thought that would have also been a good moment because I think that's a message we get, a tale as old as time. It's like the generation that you raise to be better off than you were and to think differently than you did
Yeah.
often ends up making those changes that you wanted to see made because of the way you raised them.
Yeah.
And I thought that would have been a better way of handling that message than just kind of summing it up as, no, what you wanted to do, was kind of
perfectly fine.
justified.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, nah, I don't buy that. So, I mean, I know that's a little nitpicky. I still gave
No,
it
it was a
3.
really
I
good
don't-
observation.
Yeah,
and
I don't
didn't-
think it's nitpicky.
I didn't
yeah.
catch that,
Yeah.
and then when you mentioned it, I was like, man, that's a astute observation. So
So, even still,
It's very Holmesian.
source
Two-
material wise, I didn't know the source material at all, and I think that might play maybe a little bit into my
The book
decision of
that
the
it
rating
was-
was because it's
yeah.
based on a series of books.
Well, it's
and-
based on.
and-
It's not the original, like not the Sherlock Holmes.
No,
books
it's
by
based on
Arthur-
Enola Holmes, yeah. And
It's-
I've just never read that. I didn't even know it was a thing.
Well,
when I-
they're new. They're newer. They're young
Yeah.
adult novels.
Yeah.
So they're written for younger audiences, and they came out in like 2010. So
so
they're very new.
Agatha Christie-esque
Yeah.
in
Well,
its
no,
audience.
Well, Agatha Christie's for adults, so I don't.
know. They're middle school.
I always
reading
read
level.
them as young. I
In
thought they
high
were young
school,
adults.
Yeah.
They
but-
were. Yeah. I mean, we read them in high school, but Agatha Christie didn't aim at
No,
younger
no,
audiences.
but-
These are aimed directly
Okay,
for younger
okay.
audiences. Yeah. Like they're meant like think Harry Potter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I do think Harry Potter because I mean, I don't know about in the books, but in the movies, he doesn't do anything. Everybody does everything for him, and everything just kind of falls in his lap. Like Harry Potter's not this all-powerful wizard
Well, he's
that
not supposed to be.
I know, but in the films, it makes it like everybody just
I know,
does
we're on a
everything
different
for
subject
him.
now.
him.
Yeah.
Well,
But
no, I
I'm like,
think it's funny 'cause-
that's what I compared
the
it to
movies
really
are
watching it.
terrible,
And I was
yeah.
just like, everybody's helping her to these conclusions, and everything's
Yes.
just falling in her. She's not
Yes.
really having to do any of the work, like you said.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's how I compare it to Harry Potter.
It's kind of
I don't
more
feel like
along
he
the
did
lines of
any of the work.
like Nancy Drew. Only Nancy
Yeah,
Drew is
yeah.
an original character that makes it. That's my thing. Is like, why do we need Enola Holmes? And I get it. It's based off of books, but I'm like, you already have a really good character in Nancy Drew that no one's made a decent movie about. They haven't made a decent movie about
What are you
Enola
talking about?
Holmes
There's
either.
that Emma Roberts version.
Oh, well.
Well, they did. No, that one with the girl from It. They just made that version.
It's like, hell,
Oh,
even,
that's right.
I don't know if that's any good.
right.
I haven't seen it yet.
Even
so.
Well, with Netflix is
Veronica
canceling the
Mars
thing.
is along the same lines.
Hell,
It's a
freaking
girl
Alias.
detective that's better than her dad, better.
Alias is like the
Oh,
whole
yeah,
like James Bond-esque.
But that's my thing is like you don't have to like those are characters that were made up and stand on their own and are solid good characters. It's like you don't have to piggyback off of Sherlock Holmes, which is what I feel like this kind of did without making her a significant character. It's fine. Like I said, I liked the contrast between the idea of Sherlock and competing with the sister, but then it's like when you make her just better at everything just because I'm like, okay, then
Yeah,
this isn't
without
good.
without proving it,
Yeah.
It's like
without
you're-
without seeing
yeah,
it develop.
You're literally
throughout.
that's literally what
Exactly.
they did. They piggybacked off Sherlock. Well, you know how smart he is. Well, she's smarter than him.
because she's
And
a
it-
woman.
Which and here's the thing, though.
that's how I feel
that's
about
how
it.
they-
It's like you're only making her smarter than the character that we've known and loved because she's female.
And that
she
was
has to
that
be
was
smarter.
the
She
only
has to be
issue
better.
with the feminist backdrop is it didn't
Right.
help their case because it leaned on that crutch more.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas it's like I was perfectly fine with believing that she was the next up and coming Holmes, but I wanted to see her learn the things maybe from a Sherlock.
Yeah.
And it's like it didn't make sense to me that
well, you
she
can't
just
have Sherlock
intuitively
mansplain to her, Brand.
Well, exactly. And that's the problem we run into is then it immediately comes into that mind of like
Neil argues
know-
that Harry Potter is a series for adults.
it is.
it
the books.
towards the end.
I would
No,
say
no,
the books are.
towards the end.
But
It-
see,
it
she
is
always argued that they were meant to be picked up.
all ages. I would say all ages.
But she argued that it was like meant for when it came out. It was I was in like 5th grade or
We were in
even
elementary
younger,
school.
elementary. But
Yeah.
it was like supposed to be as you grew
As
up.
you grew
Yeah,
with
grew
him.
up
yeah.
with
the
him.
So
character.
that's what I
Yeah.
said. Towards the end of the series, it definitely is. I mean, the first 2 books are definitely solid, like young, like I wouldn't say children's, but young adult novels. Yeah,
But then, of course, it gets much
it
more
definitely
mature,
gets darker.
Yeah.
which is great.
Yeah.
I think that's fantastic. You ease people into that.
The
And
movies don't.
no,
Not as
the movies are absolutely
Movies are
trash.
terrible.
Yeah.
I hate
All right, guys. So we've talked about Enola Holmes. We got a whole nother movie review
Yeah,
to
we
go
better
into.
get to that one.
I know. We
Wow.
better just dive right into it. Here is our review of our first Halloween movie this year, Rear Window.
That's right. It's time to shut off the lights, get cozy under a blanket, pop some popcorn, and scare yourself silly. Because October is here once again. And with it, more Halloween-themed movie reviews. Last year, we went back to the very beginnings of the genre with Universal's catalog of monster films. This year, we jump forward in time to another significant era of horror and suspense to showcase a man who not only revolutionized the horror, suspense, mystery, and thriller genres, but filmmaking in general. This year, we review some of the scariest films from the master of suspense himself, Alfred Hitchcock. Beginning with one of Hitchcock's best, 1954's Rear Window. Starring Jimmy Stewart as L.B. Jeff Jeffries, a photographer confined to a wheelchair after an accident left Jeff with a broken leg, the film takes place at the apartment complex Jeff is living in, with the vast majority of the film predominantly taking place in Jeff's apartment, as Jeff resigns himself to people watching to pass the time, watching the other residents of his complex with a pair of binoculars. One night, Jeff is awakened by screaming and sees his neighbor, Mr. Thorwald, mysteriously carrying a briefcase out in the middle of a stormy night. Mr. Thorwald continues this activity each night and hired men to remove a large case from his apartment. All the while, Mrs. Thorwald has not been seen since the night of the scream. Jeff believes Mr. Thorwald has murdered his wife, though his nurse and girlfriend Lisa, played by Grace Kelly, initially do not believe him. Jeff and Lisa soon find themselves in the center of this mystery, and in Hitchcock fashion, you are left on the edge of your seat the whole ride. Rear Window is a remarkable film that easily shows how Hitchcock earned his title of Master of Suspense. Playing with themes of human nature, which are given credence by terrific performances from Stewart and Kelly, Rear Window is a terrific mystery thriller. With cinematography, something every Hitchcock film is unique in, adding to the suspense. Showcasing scenes as they are seen from Jeff's apartment and through his binoculars. The viewer only knows what Jeff knows, and his terror becomes your terror. With relatable characters you root for to succeed, the lack of knowing what's happening across the courtyard in another room while a character may be in mortal danger keeps you glued to the screen. Hitchcock had a way of scaring people not with elaborate monsters or bloody knives, but with pure relatable human horror and the darkness that humanity is capable of on their own. Building tension as your mind is left to wonder what happens next, Hitchcock's simpler films are often scarier than any modern horror film. And while Rear Window isn't an outright horror film in and of itself, the suspense it builds is more effective than any outright horror. Rear Window has earned its spot amongst Hitchcock's most notable works, and it is a terrific way to start the Halloween season. I give Rear Window 3.5 out of 4 stars.
3.5 out of 4 stars.
That's a
Well,
clear
that's a little bit
contrast.
better than Enola Holmes there.
Significantly better than Enola Holmes.
Oh, hell yeah. So, obviously, just an absolute classic.
Very high 3.5. Very
yeah,
high.
it was. Like I said,
So
watching.
what knocked off the half star for you?
Ooh, that's a good question.
I gotta know.
I mean, it just. I mean, I can't really pinpoint. Like I said, I mean, it was really good. It just doesn't quite grab me, I think, in the way that, like, or quite terrify me. I mean, it scares me, but it doesn't. I don't know. Something about Psycho really gets, like, really creeps me out. And like, gets under my skin. Yeah. And not that this isn't a straight out horror like Psycho either. So, I mean, it's not, shouldn't.
Thriller.
It's, yeah. But I don't.
There's nothing wrong with it. I would just say there are a couple parts where I feel like it there's a little bit that I love. For one, I love the suspense of not knowing. I was just talking about this while the review was going on about how it had been a long time since I'd seen this film, so rewatching it was fantastic. Yeah. And I actually had to kind of remember, I was like, I don't know if he actually did kill his wife, in the film. And then after rewatching, I was like, no, they make it pretty apparent. Yeah. And I do wish there were a little bit more, like, the clues to kind of allude to, like, no, he did
what's
do it.
Going on.
But that's a really nitpicky,
for me,
very nitpicky.
Some of the banter, not that it's bad, because there was really great dialogue, and Hitchcock films always do. But I just felt like some of it was still just a little campier than even what I had remembered from seeing it before. And not that it's necessarily bad, because, I mean, trust me, like, after seeing some of the movies we watched from the Best Picture films, nowhere near as campy or bad. But there's just some things that I just felt like it just wasn't quite. And
honestly, some of it was a little.
It was close. It was
a
good.
little risky for. I mean, the fact that
time,
the Grace Kelly's character, like, bringing over. She's
hey.
I
like that.
Now, one thing I do love.
She like comes over and brings over, like, her nightgown and everything. Oh
yeah.
And there's even, like, his buddy stops by and. Every once in a while he's just like, you better watch what you say. Like, don't you even allude to it. Yeah.
And I also, like, they make a big deal about him being stuck in the wheelchair with the broken leg, and that's fine. You need that for the setup. But I'm like, people with broken legs can use crutches too, and it's like he could. I'm not saying he could get around easily. You can't, but he could have. He wasn't as trapped as I felt like someone with a broken leg. Yeah. Like, I felt like they made him out to be way more trapped than what someone with a broken leg would be. And again, I mean, it's part of the story, and it wasn't a big thing. It's kind of a it really not kind of, it is a nitpicky thing, but it's just little things like that. But one thing I do love about this movie, and I mentioned, like, all Hitchcock films have great cinematography, but I love just all the angles from his window, the whole, like, rear window, and everything he sees from his window, and you see the courtyard.
Yes.
You see the action going on in the rooms across the courtyard, but you only see it from his perspective.
Yes.
You see through the windows or through the binoculars, and I love that because that's what builds the suspense.
Well, and that's what's crazy about this.
Very
and what's
voyeur-esque or whatever.
But what's so brilliant is it is literally just this one set. There's nothing else to the movie but this one set, his apartment and out that rear window. And what I love is, the cinematography, the brilliance of using the binoculars or even his camera lens. And I love it just because it's like, it's just genius for them to sit there and, like, he's using the binoculars and then he's like, I need to look closer. And so he busts out this huge telephoto lens and he's looking through it, and I love that it shows up closer. And it's just a common little trick, but it's like the amazing way in which the story is told from this one perspective, but it tells so many different interesting stories.
Well, for me, that's
I was just going to say,
that's what makes it scary, is because since you only know what he knows from his perspective, you don't know what's going on. You don't know what the characters over there are doing. And when you get that feeling of them coming after him, it's like, oh, crap. You don't know where they're at or what's going on because you only know what he knows and what he sees. Yeah. You go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to point out that, and I pointed out before we started talking, I did not get to watch this film this weekend, but I have seen it before, and I was going to ask because I'm remembering bits and pieces of it. But the reason that the way that he explains obviously if all the windows were shut and the drapes were pulled and all that, he wouldn't have the visual that he has. But isn't it like the windows are all open because of
it's the heat
that's
hot? It's very hot,
and there's something going on with the building that they're.
No,
or they just didn't have.
They just didn't have central air.
Yeah. So back then it was hot, and that's why the windows are open. So that's why he's so easily able to see into the windows.
And
I remember that. That's just a great storytelling element.
Exactly, that you don't even. And it's funny because it's like you see some people throughout the movie putting blinds down when they want some privacy.
Right.
Or like even I love the scene where everything is lit up, but the one man's apartment is completely dark, and they allude to that, and then. just all of the different, like, you can tell, again, from his perspective, all of these different storylines playing out with the different characters. And I love seeing how the varied number of people, you've got a young new couple, you've got a struggling artist that's a pianist, you've got a ballerina dancer who brings over all these men. She's young and hot, and she knows what she's got. You've got the struggling lonesome.
She's young and hot, and she knows what she's got.
I'm serious. That's the best way to put it. And trust me, no lie, Hitchcock uses this in like the first 5 minutes of the film. He uses that set piece very well.
Oh yeah.
But like then there's the young or the older kind of middle-aged woman who's lonely, who's looking for a man, and you see her acting out a dinner scene by herself and then collapsing on the couch and crying. And I just love his storytelling of all these characters building up just this entire, it literally makes this whole complex a living, breathing character. And that adds to the story that then tells you about what's going on with the murder. And again, it all ratchets up and builds in the suspense. And really the only conversations that you have with him are between him and like 3 other people. And it's a fantastic movie, well paced throughout, not a single moment that seems wasted. It all has some, a story to tell, and every single second it matters, and it's just fantastic from start to finish.
Jacob Burris mentions that a lot of the Hitchcock films that he has seen have minimal sets, and he just mentions Rope, Rear Window, and Lifeboat as coming to mind.
Which I know Rope is one of Jacob's favorites, which also stars Jimmy Stewart.
Kind of the first time we see that single camera trope, where they try to use the same
all one shot.
It looks like all one shot, but again, I think it's a testament to Hitchcock's ability to tell a story with minimal, with those minimal details,
but with technical details too.
Exactly,
like just the camera angles and just looking through the binoculars and the lens and things like that. I think that's
it showcases
his ingenuity when it comes to filmmaking,
especially at that time. Which just lasts, of course, and stands the test of time.
I would like to give a brief shout out to Jacob to just mention that if you ever want to know anything about Hitchcock, Jacob is the person to go to.
Absolutely,
one of his all-time favorites.
I don't know who. Maybe he'll be on one episode this month. Who knows? If he wants to discuss any of these Hitchcock films,
Jacob is a connoisseur of Alfred Hitchcock. So,
and we also want to congratulate Jacob.
Oh yeah.
He's got some great, huge announcement that he just released on Facebook today. So I don't think it's bad that we announce it.
Let everybody know.
Yeah, let's let everybody know that Jacob and his wife Melissa are having a little baby.
They're gonna have
gonna add a little baby Burris.
Little baby.
So congratulations, Jacob.
He's gonna be. He's already outnumbered. He's gonna be vastly outnumbered.
Oh, yes. Especially
I kind of wish he had a young little boy Burris, a son.
Baby Burris.
I really want to see that. Like I just feel like Jacob would be a good father to his son, and I kind of want to see. But Melissa and Marley are much happier that they're getting another girl. So
truthfully, I would have just called him that too. It would have been just Boy Burris.
Boy Burris.
Would have never called him by his name. I would have been like, Boy.
Come, Boy Burris.
Yeah. Boy Burris.
I would
come
imagine him being Sheldon and the son being young Sheldon.
And oh man, we'd be raising another Hitchcock lover. Alrighty, guys. Definitely check out Rear Window if you've never seen it.
Definitely.
An absolute.
Have you ever seen Disturbia with Shia LaBeouf?
It's kind of based.
Shia with Disturbia was. It really.
It's inspired by.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
It has to be.
No, it was.
Because even the broken leg and him having the radio collar on his foot, on his ankle, watching everything from across the street, and it just really screams.
It does. It harkens back to absolutely.
Yeah.
Which Disturbia is not a bad movie.
No, it's
either.
actually a decent film with Shia LaBeouf.
Rear Window, I would say, is
way
better,
better.
But Disturbia is not bad. Yeah.
All right, guys. I think we're gonna have to move on now because we're running close on time. Let's move on to our headlines. That's right, guys. It's our headlines this week. We've got 3 big ones to talk about.
Well, I was gonna say there are kind of a lot of them. They're
Some
big,
but
they're kind of more of the same too, like along the same themes of what we've been reporting. So
true, but the first one right out of the gate that we have to mention, is of course it leads right into the second one, but that is No Time to Die. It's finally been pushed back. It is now pushed back to April of next year.
At this point, nothing's going to
It
release.
doesn't
this year.
surprise me.
Yeah.
We just got word probably a couple hours before the show that
Wonder
Woman
Woman's
going
is
straight to
looking like,
streaming.
man,
Maybe.
I don't think it'll go to streaming. I think it'll get pushed back to next
I don't
year.
know.
If they go straight
they've already
to
pushed
streaming,
it back once.
Yeah.
It's like once you start pushing it back multiple times, they kind of start.
but they're
looking
doing
at
that with every
streaming.
other No Time to Die.
Well, that's
My
we'll
thing
see.
is, I really feel like at this point, even April of next year is not going to matter.
yeah.
I agree. I don't think it will either.
it's going to be at even 80% operating.
Nope.
When it comes to the theaters,
The Batman was pushed back to
2022.
Yeah, 2022.
Yeah.
That's insane.
I don't think everybody's pushing things back till next year, and I wish next year would be normal, but I have a feeling we're still going to be in the same boat for most of next year as well.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like the entire movie industry is, and that brings us, of course, right into our second headline, which, no surprise, Regal Cinemas is closing back down. They opened up just like all the others.
Right.
You know,
They're not
just like
closing
AMC.
for good.
No, no,
Point
no,
that
no,
out.
no.
But they closed once, they reopened, and now they're shutting back down.
They
Shutting
can't
back
stay
down?
in operation.
Yeah.
They're not the only chain talking about closing, but they're the first to
Yeah.
announce they are closing down again. There's
I think
even
AMC will.
well, there's rumors that AMC only has 6 months
6
left
months
of finances
yeah.
before they're so. And again, they keep saying we're fine,
We're fine. We're fine.
Yet we keep hearing that they're in
It's
trouble.
their line of credit or
Yeah,
whatever
yeah.
is has 6
Which,
months. Or
and
something
here's the
like
thing, I can't knock them for that, because at least for one, if you're going to come out and say it, at least you're going to be honest.
Yeah.
It was all the BS talk back in the beginning of
Oh,
COVID
yeah.
and
Yeah.
the wishy-washy nature of their finances. It's like, just be honest.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
If you have only so many months of solvency, then you got to be,
Basically,
upfront.
AMC was like Donald Trump right now.
Yeah, just all over the
pretending
place.
that everything is okay.
Yeah.
That he doesn't have coronavirus and that he's not feeling ill. That's
Well, one
AMC.
thing, and I hate to get political, but it's kind of the Regal CEO came out and said, or it's the parent company of Regal. I think that's
Cine,
oh gosh, I forget the name.
I forgot
of
it too. I'll look it up.
But he came out and stated, he
Cineworld.
Cineworld.
How did I not catch that?
Oh,
Cineworld.
I would've
That's
think
the
of-
most unoriginal.
I would have thought of Cinemark. I mean,
Cinemark.
is the first thing I think
Cinemark's better than
Yeah, I think
Cineworld.
Cinemark sounds better. than
Cineworld sounds like a theme park.
of. Hey, that would be
It's a movie theme park.
drive-ins and theaters. We got them all at Cineworld.
It's like your discount theater
Yes.
shop.
Come on down for your projector, $2.99.
We ain't got 4K, but we got 2K.
It's like, you tired of using that sheet? Well, don't worry. Those things won't get on your nerves anymore with our canvas, luxury canvas. Come on down to Cineworld.
Just 4 easy payments.
But no, so the CEO of Cineworld came out and was directly pointing his blame at two largest states in the union right now that are still on lockdown, which are New York and California. And he stated the fact that these two major markets, especially New York, with it not being open, you have tons of critics and tons of just mass audiences, of course, that would theoretically be going back to the theater and generate enough revenue to hopefully keep others open. But because there is no foot traffic in these major cities and everything is still on lockdown, they're being forced to close down again and stay closed until those states do reopen. And the problem is that the states are so vague as to what their reopening
Well, they have no
credentials
plans
are.
to reopen anytime
They don't.
soon.
I mean, they're sitting here talking about a vaccine, and originally it was, we all want to beat the curve. It was so we don't overwhelm the hospitals. And now all of a sudden it's just no end in sight until there's a vaccine. And it's like, and how many cases have they reported today? And how many deaths have they reported today? But they continue to maintain that this lockdown theory is somehow, because, and that's what pisses me off about this whole entire situation, is they don't have to answer for the businesses that they're destroying by staying in lockdown and not allowing people to choose at their own risk. Because that's the thing. There is no guarantee that if they release the lockdown measures, people would flood back to the theaters.
Yeah.
But again, we haven't gone back to the theater since Tenet, and partly the reason was
there's nothing to
there's
see.
nothing
There's
coming
nothing to
out.
see.
And now there definitely
Even the
isn't.
old movies that they're bringing back aren't really worth jumping back into the theater
This
to see.
month I'm more interested in because they actually they have Hocus Pocus and Psycho.
Yeah.
And some of that stuff's cool. But yeah, a lot of the even the older films have not even been older, but just kind of the last couple years that they've they're just showing
Yep.
stuff that we've seen. And I'm like, I don't want to go watch.
I don't
all
want to
this
see
again.
something
Yeah.
from 2 years ago. I'd rather see something
Yep.
like Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
And
that was fine.
You made the comment about how many deaths and how many new cases. We're not making light of that. That is
No.
a serious thing. But if you really think about it, there's a 95% survival rate of coronavirus. Now, that's unfortunate for those who don't fall into that 95% right now. But there's
Well, and even
there's a
that's
100%
that's even 95%
mortality
depending on
rate
what
of businesses if
Yeah.
things don't open.
Yeah.
And then you're putting people in a much different harm's way, because this is something that's not just going to last 2 weeks. This is something that's going to ruin their lives, their
Yes.
livelihoods, their families' lives. They've said the rate of depression and suicide has skyrocketed because of this, because of people losing their businesses, people being locked up indoors, people not being able to socialize. At some point, you've got to reopen
You
and
have to.
resume a normal way
you
of
have
life,
to take the
whether
ri-
it's with
because
a
the
mask
risk
or
of not reopening is just
is
as
far
great.
greater. Yeah.
And I'm sorry, but even the 95% of survival rate is still 5% is a lot.
It is.
when you're talking
It's
about
nothing to make light of,
a
but-
virus. But even that 5% death rate is specifically within a certain population of those who are 60 and above.
And
it's like-
pre-existing conditions.
And pre-existing
or,
conditions.
yeah,
I mean, there's
other
just so
conditions.
many other factors that it is so negligible. It is absolutely insane and negligible for these bigger states to hold people hostage in their homes while we have seen months of protesting / rioting going on in our nation's cities. And yet these people who are law-abiding citizens are having to be held in their homes while now look, here's the thing. I do not think that theaters are going to hurt. I don't think theaters are going away. I know Nolan and I forget the other person he teamed up with or wanting
there's
Congress
several.
to step in.
Well,
There's
one of
several.
them was James Cameron.
James Cameron's
one.
Well, the one that
they've-
shouldn't
they've
be spoken of.
petitioned to Congress about
well,
saving theaters.
And I get
They
that.
let
It was
them out.
signed by several directors.
But
I
here's the
think
thing.
them two
They were the
headed
two
it
big
up.
names.
I'm not for Congress stepping. Look, these big theater chains, yes, I know that maybe 6 months AMC has from being bankrupt, and that's no small joke. I'm not sitting here saying that's not something to be worried about. But I am saying that theaters are going to be picked back up. The moment the economy is back up to stuff, the moment that entertainment is back into being a priority in everybody's lives, no doubt in my mind that people, whether it's the older people who ran the business or new ones that come in, are going to pick it back up, and theaters are going to usher back in waves of people. It's just a matter of time that, because I know people here still may not feel safe about going back to the theater.
I mean, the 2 times
That
we
we've
went,
gone.
there was hardly anybody there.
Yeah, but at the same time, giving people the option and making it available, especially when you have larger populations of people, there's no doubt in my mind that it would help immensely get these businesses back on track. And so I think the Regal, closing back down is worrisome, because I think it's a trend that is now going to be followed by Cinemark, by AMC, and I think you're going to see this happen to the rest of the theaters because there are no new movies coming out.
Yep.
And with all these movies either hitting streaming or being pushed back, clearly the studios have said, we don't have enough people going to the theaters. And I truly think that the problem with Tenet ultimately was the fact that when it came out, it wasn't just that theater owners were riding on the back of Tenet, it was riding on the back of Tenet and then what is next. And the thing is there was
nothing
such a huge gap between Tenet and what was supposed to be the next major release, which was probably Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
And that would have been this month or next month. So the fact is that
Well, it was supposed to
It
be.
was
It
originally
was
supposed to be
October.
this week.
Yeah, it was supposed to be this week. Yeah.
So that alone right there tells me that if you had literally a 3-month gap almost a 3-month gap in between when Tenet came out and the next major release, there's no way. If you had Tenet, Wonder Woman, No Time to Die, I have no doubt that there could have been a string of releases that would have kept people going back to the theater.
Yeah.
And it would have kept people saying, okay, this is worth my time. But it couldn't stand on just one movie alone. And I think that was the fault of when Tenet came out and what people were expecting Tenet to do.
Well, yeah, even
And hindsight's 20/20. So
even
I mean,
Cineworld mentioned that that No Time to Die was the linchpin. Like, that was the nail in the coffin for
Yes.
keeping. If that was not going to release this year, then they weren't going to be able to stay open. They were holding out for that one big release to bring people to the theaters. And I mean, like you said, if Tenet didn't do it, I'd like to think No Time to Die would have brought a little bit more of an audience.
Yeah, I would have hoped to.
But we're
I
still
think
at that
they were
point
hoping,
where
like Wonder Woman, Black Widow, No Time to Die, but then you saw Wonder Woman and Black Widow get pushed back,
Well,
and
yeah.
all that left was No Time to Die. And then once it was pushed back, they're like, well, that's it.
That's done.
That's the straw that breaks the
Yeah.
camel's back. There's
Yeah.
nothing.
And I think that's sadly what we are left with.
and that just makes
we'll
people
just-
so crazy that they punch Rick Moranis in the
I'm
street.
telling you, man, and thank you for leading into that, because it's just absolutely absurd.
2020 has been a horrible, horrible
just
year,
is the-
but never in
Poor
all.
guy.
Let's say,
He
I
comes
mean,
out of
my
retirement
gosh.
for a commercial with Ryan Reynolds, and the next thing you know,
well,
he
he's-
gets sucker punched in
he's
the
actually
street.
doing the Honey I Shrunk the Kids.
Oh, I
sequel,
know. I'm
too.
just
Yeah.
saying, it's just funny.
It's-
'cause
but
he
it's
touts
sad.
as the guy that got him out of
Yeah.
retirement.
Yeah.
But
And it's
And so my thing is like 2020's been bad enough, but you know it's a horrible year when Rick Moranis gets punched.
if
'Cause
there's-
who,
well,
who
and
punches Rick
Who
Moranis?
doesn't like him?
I saw it best. It's like if there's one thing that can unite us all, it's hunting this asshole down
Yeah.
Yeah.
and taking revenge.
Oh
on
yeah.
him.
Yeah.
Chris
I'm
Evans.
telling you
I was
right
like, man,
now.
he posted on Twitter. He's like, we need to find this guy. I was like, man, when Captain America's coming after your ass, you know you did
Damn
something
right.
wrong.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, the fact the guy left acting because his wife passed away.
Yeah.
He was raising his children
As a single father,
and now
yeah.
that his kids are raised, he was looking forward to coming back into acting.
I'm just gonna
And-
say-
and this jerkwad
Yeah.
comes out of nowhere,
He just punches
and
him.
punches him.
Yep.
Got
It's
him on camera.
insane.
You know somebody's gonna hunt him
If
down.
nobody
just
has
insane.
if nobody has made the meme yet, somebody needs to get on this. I want the meme of Captain America saying, "Let's go get this son of a bitch."
Yes, yes,
From
yes, absolutely.
we need that.
Oh, we need that
chasing
so
down
bad.
the guy that punched Rick Moranis.
I'm telling you, man, if there's anything else this world could offer up, it's that. If there's one thing that can make 2020 right, it's giving us a piece of that man. Because I'm telling you right now, Rick Moranis has to be avenged.
Yes,
Yes, we have
Captain
to.
America.
I'm telling you,
My
first
grandkids are
Avenger.
gonna ask me about 2020. I'm like, that's the year Rick Moranis got punched.
that's why it all started, peeps.
Yeah.
That's why. So yes, we are out there on the hunt for that. No, man, I'm gonna.
You want to say words?
I do
that
want
ought
to
not
say
be
words
said
that I should
live.
not say on here, so I'll refrain. All right, guys, those are our headlines.
Those
I think we
are.
are finally ready to head into.
We've got 5 minutes left for our
Let's
unique
do it.
weekly segment. Let's
Here's
go.
our story time segment.
It's story time, where the podcast members tell their stories.
Story time.
Stoppery time.
You know what? You know what's funny?
It does.
It's stoppery time.
It's stoppery time.
What?
That's what your
notes
Your
says
notes. It says
stoppery
stoppery
time.
Oh, I was
time.
like, did I suppose? As long as it's not on screen,
No, it's
then
not
I can't be blamed. if
I
if
don't
you
know.
don't see it on
If
air,
if that's how you spelled it on screen.
hold on. Let me pull up the lower. I don't think I did.
Oh man.
Well, I'll pull up the lower after we introduce
Hopefully
the
you
We
Topic.
get kind of a summary every week of what the headlines and the show is going to be, and in his notes on Unique Weekly segment, it says stoppery time.
Stoppery time.
Then it says 10 exclamation point without the
Nothing.
Oh yeah, yeah. Now that's usual.
because we come up with it on the fly.
yeah,
every
right.
week.
I just make it up, after I ask you guys.
So what is this week's story
Stoppery time?
Yeah.
Our stoppery time this week is all about, since we only have one in the month of October.
Yeah.
Sean came up with it, which I think is brilliant, which is what gives you the creeps. Ooh, and I spelled it right.
Spookums.
I just checked. I
Brilliant.
I spelled it right.
What gives you the spookums?
Spookums.
Spookums.
So I'll start. We
Yeah,
talked
you
about this a
go
little bit,
ahead.
Brian. I didn't talk about mine at all. I wanted to save it. Well, first of all, I'll just say, not much really scares me. But one thing that I don't like, as far as I guess phobia goes, I'm not afraid of heights, but I hate being on ladders. Like if I get up on a roof, I'm fine. Like once I'll climb a tree. I mean, I used to climb that tree when
yeah.
in your
Baboon
backyard.
Man.
Yeah. Heights don't bother me. Ladders do. I don't like being at the top of a ladder. I'm a big guy. It starts creaking and wobbling, and I'm like, I'm going to come off this thing. I don't.
Pull the Clark Griswold.
So that's
You beat me to it.
Yeah.
Dang it.
just
so that's kind of my real world like kind of fear. Like I don't care for ladders, but what gives me the creeps, and it's always like I said, like normal things don't.
that's
like,
what gives you the creaks.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh!
I was going to say, how do you feel about shoots?
Shoot.
Shoots are fine, just not ladders. But it's always kind of like the thing not seen.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Like that's why like Paranormal
Yeah.
Activity like scares me. Like stuff like that, like demonic nature
Man, that's
stuff.
like the occult.
And that's the occult scares me anyways because that's demonic
real.
nature.
Demonic.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's real people
That's
doing
stuff like
stupid
that's
shit.
like I'm not messing with that. Because I
No
believe,
way.
yeah, I believe that stuff's real. I don't want to mess with it. And what gave me the idea for like this, what creeps me out is I told you I've been watching The Haunting of Hill House on Netflix.
Yeah.
Which, excellent.
Fantastic show.
I love it. I'm on episode 6, and it scared the hell out of me.
and they renewed
I mean,
it for a second season, right?
Yeah, well,
So it'll get canceled after
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Well, the second season's based on a different novel. Each season will be based on something because the Haunting of Hill House is a 1959 novel.
Yeah.
The second one's going to be based on the turn of the screw, and they actually named the show The Haunting of Bly Manor, I guess, to keep the haunting theme.
Well, the Haunting of Hill
Yeah.
House was a movie, wasn't it?
There is a movie
The-
called
it's
The
The
No,
Haunting.
The House on Haunted,
Haunted
Hill is a movie, but that's
Separate.
not based on the novel.
Okay.
There is a movie based off of The Haunting of
It's a
Hill
terrible
House, and it's
movie.
called The Haunting. It has Liam Neeson and Owen Wilson, and it's a terrible movie.
Oh, okay.
It's not that good.
It is not. But okay, one of the things the show gets into is like this woman who's like she gets diagnosed with sleep paralysis, which I know you've experienced. I've experienced it.
Oh, gosh.
Hate it.
Don't
Hate it.
eat
yeah,
it,
yeah.
man.
Hate it. Okay.
Oh,
well, here's the
no.
thing. This show focuses on this apparition called like that this little girl calls
gosh, you're
the
gonna scare
bent-necked
the hell
lady. Okay.
Oh.
And every time I see like this ghost scares me. It terrifies me every time I see it in the episode.
This is
And
like
the
out of
entire-
the game PT.
Oh yeah, the entire 5th episode is focused on this ghost, okay? And like this girl as an adult, like her therapist is telling her she has sleep paralysis, and when she wakes up, like she can't move and she's terrified.
gosh,
and
yes,
her
yeah.
seeing this ghost is just in her mind, even though it's not. But the therapist is telling her that's just in your mind. And every time, like just watching that and knowing I've had sleep paralysis before, it freaked me out.
Yep.
And just I just and it. When I think about like waking up and not being able to move and seeing shadows and stuff, I'm just like, oh god,
Yep.
now I'm forever going to think of this bent-necked lady from this show, and it's going to terrify me from now on.
Yeah. No, I've been there. I've totally experienced sleep paralysis. I've woken up. I've seen there was a thing on Netflix.
That documentary?
The documentary about nightmares.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's one particular, all of them describe like this shadowy silhouette of a figure with like red eyes. Mine's never been red eyes.
Yeah, I've never had the red eyes, but I've had shadowy
definitely
figures,
had the
yeah.
shadowy figure, and you can't move. And I've felt it before to where I try to go back to sleep, and then it feels like I'm being pushed, like through the bed, like and through the floorboard, and like out into like outside the house, and then I'm like floating above
Now
the
I'm thinking
house.
of like Insidious.
It's freaking
the further.
yeah, it's freaking creepy, dude. And I don't know how to describe it.
yeah.
I just pray.
It's
you
a
know?
it's a
That's all you can
it's a
do.
terrifying experience.
It's
it is.
terrifying.
And it's not going to be any better now that I've watched the show because I'm just.
I don't
want
wanna
to
watch it now.
You should. It's really good. I mean, I love it, but it's terrifying.
Sean, what about you? What gives you the creeps?
Well, it's nothing that deep or dense
Hold on.
like that,
I
but-
should. I don't know why I haven't done this yet. I should just do this while we're, just sitting here doing the creeps.
Ooh,
It's
oh.
like,
I wish this had the whole time I was talking about like
this
sleep
would've been good.
paralysis and the bent neck lady.
So
Ooh.
what gives you the creeps, Sean?
I'll be honest with you. The only thing that really creeps me out is where I live, for instance, is really dark at
Yeah.
night. Like there's no lights, there's no street lights, there's no nothing. Even the lights on my house are not bright enough that you can see them once you move to the bottom of my hill. The hill blocks the light, so you can't see it. Anytime I'm outside at night, whether it's letting the dog out, whether it's taking the trash cans down to the street, it doesn't matter how bright my freaking flashlight is. I always feel that there's something watching from the woods. Yes. And I'm very paranoid about it to the point where I like have my flashlight up and I'll pan it around and look everywhere.
Yep.
And if I hear a limb pop, if I hear a leaf crackle, if I hear water dripping, well, it doesn't matter. I'm like I'm looking all around, and I'm always expecting to see something just show up in my light, like either moving through the trees or eyes glowing or anything like that. And it really just creeps me out to the point that I'm actually terrified to go out of the house at night to get something out of the car, to take the trash down. And I usually don't end up doing this stuff until it's
Daytime?
dark, until it's
Yeah.
night. And so it's like on Sunday night, I got to take the trash down. I dread it every Sunday night. And I try to remember to do it during the day, and I never do.
You always
and then
forget.
it's freaking Sunday night. Amelia's getting ready to go to bed. She's like, don't forget the trash comes tomorrow. And I'm like, God.
I
And I mean, like, I take the
And you
flashlight
have a
with me
long
and everything.
driveway.
And it's that long, dark freaking driveway.
is,
and there's
man.
trees all around my house. And it just, I always expect to see something.
Yes.
And every now and then, the deer will be laying in my yard. And the light from my flashlight will hit their eyes, and they'll glow green.
Yes.
And their eyes will light up, and
It's
I'll
better
oh
than
my
glowing
God.
red.
That's not then. Yeah, nothing glows red. I mean, unless it's really.
well,
a
I was
monster.
just saying, yeah.
But
you see it
almost
glow
every,
red, you know
every
it's
animal,
run.
it usually glows yellow or green. But no, seriously, like as soon as I see those eyes, I know it's deer. I know it is in
Yeah.
my mind.
Doesn't
I got
matter.
it. I know, but I look and I watch, and I walk backwards with my like watching it. Like I won't turn my back to them.
Of course
Because
not.
I'm like, as soon as I turn my back, I'm going to turn back around,
Yep.
and they're going to be 20 feet closer.
Yep.
Like they're coming at me, and it just that is one thing that has really creeped me out
Yep.
in the last like 4 or 5 years of my life.
Living
like
there.
it's terrifying.
That actually no, that reminds me of just being like when I was little, and I remember just the whole being scared of the basement when it's dark down there,
Yeah.
and like having to go down and like I remember we always had this refrigerator in the basement that we kept all our Cokes in,
Mm-hmm.
and so it was like dinner time, and they'd be like, you know, go
Go
down
get a
and get
Coke.
some Cokes,
Yeah.
and it would just freak me out to have to like, and I would always do it as like a speed test. I'd joke around
Oh,
like,
yeah.
oh,
Run.
I'm doing it quick, like see how fast I am, but really I was just too scared that I didn't want to stay down there too
Yeah.
long. So like I would just, and it was never really being down in the basement in the dark as much as it was going down there, and then like it still went around a corner and then another corner into the laundry room.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I'd be down there and like the furnace would kick on or something.
Yes.
And it's just that little extra creepy of like if somebody were hiding in
This
anywhere
is
in the
where they
house,
would hide.
they would hide down here
Yeah.
in the dark. And so that's what would freak me out. But then the things that
Like
still give
Kevin
me the creep.
McAllister when like the furnace
Yes, the
is-
furnace lights.
yeah.
Yes, and I love that because it's like
You can
a
relate,
perfect.
yeah.
Yes, and like the things that still give me the creeps are just things that don't even exist. Like simple being out there in the woods like that, I would hate it because I would do the same thing with the flashlight. But to me, like, you know, I think of werewolves and creatures that don't exist,
Yeah.
but they scare the hell out of me. And
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, you know, if it's out there, it's going to be right in those woods.
Yep.
And like you said, if
Watching. I
the
feel
m-
like
yes,
something's watching me.
just hunting you.
Yeah.
And
I
that's
always feel like
somebody's watching me. And now, honestly, if I turn on, you know, if I turn that song on, I'll be fine. That or Eddie Murphy's Party All the Time, I'll be good. But no, it's like, it's that. And then I remember one thing that I was able to overcome, but it did kind of freak me out sometimes, but I would always kind of just talk to myself. When we were filming the movie 26 Years, we had to film it up at my church. And this church has, you know, the sanctuary itself is apart from like the fellowship hall, which was named after this guy named, I don't know his first name, but it was the Mollenauer building. And it was built in like, it had to be the 1800s sometime. So it's an old building. And there were times when after, you know, we would film, obviously I never had a problem if it was like me, Keith up there, me, Keith and Nathan, or just me and Nathan. Like somebody's up there, not a problem at all. But there were times at the end of filming, I would have to go up there to get pickup shots of just solo, you know, whether it be like a doorknob or looking down a hallway. Like but there were no actors or anything that I needed.
Right.
So instead of inviting any of them to come along, I just simply would go up there by myself and shoot it. And I remember always I never was so creeped out because, again, it's like I always kind of go along with this adage that, you know, and it was just, you know, my brother kind of gave me the, you know, I guess the comfort of knowing. He was like, you know, you don't have to worry about like being possessed or anything like that. He's like, because you're saved, it's all good.
Yeah.
So it's like I never felt like that there was spiritually anything going on, but it was still creepy being in an old building where things are always settling, things are always creaking, and of course they have this basement there that is just these long steps down into the dark. And I just remember being up there sometimes filming by myself in this place alone. And, you know, it was unsettling sometimes. And I look back now and I see some of the shots in the film that I like knew when I was there by myself.
Right.
And it just takes me back to when I filmed. I'm like, how did I do that? Like that, it was so creepy. But I totally resonate with you, Sean. I'm in the same boat of like, that or either being lost at sea or lost in space. Those are the things that give me the creeps. So, all right, guys. I think that's going to do it. But you know what you could do? If you are out there and something gives you the creeps, you can always email us.
Wow.
That's right, guys. Email us at rmpodcast@redmoonproductions.com.
That's
Ooh,
amazing.
Sounds good. Or
Isn't
you
that
can,
crazy?
You can even watch the show and comment like Neil just did.
What gives
where
him
he
the creeps?
talks about walking around his apartment at night with the lights off, and he says he's all good until he starts thinking about the possibility of someone in there
with him?
stalking him, and then he runs to the nearest light switch.
That's how I am at home. Like I'll be fine in the
Yes.
dark, but then immediately if like I hear something or I see a shadow and I think, what if there was someone in here with me? I'm like, oh dang it!
You're
now
just like,
I'm
nope,
yeah.
nope, light switch.
Yep. Let me turn it on. Let me turn it on. Don't, man. And I hate that you all are leaving right after this show.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to be up all night.
That's one thing.
Do you talk to yourself when
Oh,
you
hell
feel
yeah.
that? Do you like start
Yep.
like out loud?
Yes.
Talk to yourself to make it feel like there's
Yeah.
somebody else there with
Yes.
you. I think that's weird, but I'll be like walking up the driveway
no, I
and
do
I'll
that.
just be like, son of a bitch, you jump out at me.
Yes,
you're gonna
exactly.
Get it. You know, like I'm just,
I have to
done that.
say it out
yeah,
loud.
out loud because
that's
it makes
one-
me feel like I'm not alone.
Exactly.
That's one reason why I'm glad I have dogs is because like they tend to follow me where I go
can talk to the
anyways, so
dog.
I can kind of talk to them, and then Luke makes me feel comfortable anyways because I feel like if there's somebody in my house, Luke's gonna let me like he's gonna know before
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yep.
I just want to make sure I wasn't bipolar or something
No.
like that. Not the
No,
only
I
one that
Sit
does
there
that.
talking to somebody,
Yeah.
you know. No, you don't have a problem. Everybody does that. They're normal. Yep. Yep. There's nothing wrong with that.
Ellie will bark at everything, so I'm like, I don't get worried unless Luke starts barking. Then I'm like, okay, that could be an issue.
Yeah.
Just make sure he walks in front of you.
That's right.
But it is funny because it's like it's those little
Yeah.
things along with it's one of the instances where I'm like I kind of enjoy the fact that I live on one floor that I
Yeah.
don't have to worry about there being
Yeah.
another floor that then I'm like, well, there's only so many places, so we'll see. We'll
It's a
find them
long
real.
walk from your living room to the bedroom down that dark hallway.
I
Brandon.
hate you, man. It's creeping me out. All right, guys. But if you have any scary stories to tell us or you want to be included in the conversation right there at the bottom of your screen, rmpodcast@redmoonproductions.com. And as always, you can always catch us live every single Tuesday at 9 p.m. on YouTube and Facebook live. And be sure to catch us next week because our reviews next week are going to be Black Box, which is a Amazon Prime movie.
Yeah, we reported a few weeks back that Blumhouse was releasing several films on Amazon, and that's one of them. This month they're releasing 4 this month, and they're going to do I think 4 next year. And that's one of the 4 is Black Box. So
And then also be sure to check out, of course, Dial M for Murder, our next Hitchcock movie that we're reviewing. So 2 movies again next week. Both of them actually, though, horror.
Yeah,
So that's
yeah.
good. We're doing a double dose
Punch them
next
into
week.
Google. It'll tell you where you can go to stream them. Hopefully you're paying for the subscriptions that you can watch them. But
If not, you can
there's
always
other ways to get 'em.
you can always
Yeah,
find screeners.
I'll check Black Box out on
Yeah.
Amazon because I have Amazon, and Dial M will be a screener.
Yeah.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for this episode of the RM Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Brandon Davidson, alongside our normal new host,
Sean Sebastian.
and
Keith Cheatham.
so until next time, I don't know, we'll see you in the outer limits.
We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. For more reviews, previous podcast shows, and everything Red Moon, visit our website, redmoonproductions.com. You can also like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter by searching for Red Moon Productions, LLC. We'll see you at the movies.